Have you ever wondered why you feel exhausted, even when your life looks perfect on paper? Why a single cold glance from a stranger or the silence of a friend is enough to unsettle your mind for days? You walk through the world with a smile, but underneath there is a quiet, rhythmic drumming of anxiety. It's the sound of a person who has realized their life is not their own. Carl Jung once suggested that most people do not truly live as themselves. Instead, they live as a version of themselves they believe the world will find easier to love. They adjust their emotions to fit the collective. They build their sense of worth on recognition, and they slowly lose connection with their inner life without even noticing. This is the hidden tragedy of the modern soul. We have become experts at performing, but we have forgotten how to exist. At a certain point, the psyche begins to fill with an emptiness that is difficult to name. It's a hollow ache. It's the realization that the soul cannot grow in a life that revolves entirely around the reactions of others. Today, we are going to look into a mirror that doesn't reflect your face, but your truth. This isn't about how to make the world admire you more. It's about the opposite. What happens when you finally stop caring? What happens when a person begins to withdraw their attention from the crowd and returns it to the source? We live in an era where attention is the new global currency. From a geopolitical perspective, nations fight over resources, but on a human level, we fight for eyes. We are told that to be seen is to be valued. But Jung knew better. He knew that the greatest freedom in life doesn't lie in being acknowledged by the crowd. It lies in the moment you realize you no longer need that acknowledgement to feel real. You are being lived by the expectations of your parents, your boss, and your social feed. You are a ghost in your own skin. It's time to stop. It's time to focus only on yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of a desperate need for survival. Because if you don't find yourself soon, you might just disappear into the noise forever. We are entering a far deeper question. What is the cost of your public identity? Every time you check for a reaction, you leak energy. Every time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't care, you lose a piece of your foundation. You've been taught that being agreeable is a virtue. But in the language of the soul, chronic agreeableness is a slow suicide. You are trading your authenticity for a temporary sense of safety. But is it safe? To be loved for who you are not is the ultimate loneliness. We see this in the macroeconomy of our lives. We spend time. We don't have to buy things. We don't need to impress people we don't even like. This is the cycle of the unexamined life. Jung called us to a different path, the path of individuation. It is a lonely road, yes, but it is the only road that leads home. You feel the pain because you are trying to fit a vast, infinite spirit into a tiny, socially acceptable box. The box is breaking. Let it break. Think about your last 24 hours. How much of your mental energy was spent on things you cannot control? The way someone interpreted your email, the number of likes on a photo, the fear of being left behind in a race you never signed up for. This is an addiction. It is an addiction to validation, and it is the beginning of losing the self. The more we mature in this modern landscape, the more we become dependent on the validation of the world. We believe we are living freely, yet in truth, our inner state is controlled by countless tiny social signals. A single compliment makes us feel worthy. A moment of indifference shakes our entire sense of existence. We are like ships no longer anchored to the ocean floor, drifting only with the tides of collective perception. Jung understood that the greatest danger wasn't being rejected by others. The danger was that you might begin to see yourself entirely through their eyes. Once that happens, the center of your universe has shifted. You are no longer the captain. You are just a passenger on a ship that is headed for a storm. Let's talk about the psychological center of gravity. When you hand the authority of your worth over to the world, you live in a permanent state of instability. The world is fickle. It is a monster with 1,000 heads, and none of them truly care about your soul. When the world changes its expression, your entire sense of self trembles. There is a paradox here. The less you understand who you truly are, the more desperately you crave confirmation from others. Deep in the unconscious, external validation becomes a psychological crutch for an ego that never learned to stand. This is why you can't endure being ignored. It's not a fear of loneliness. It's a fear of the moment no eyes remain to reflect your image back to you. If no one sees you, do you even exist? Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Most of us would rather be judged by the world than face the silence of our own company. We hide in diligence, in kindness, in ambition. We work to exhaustion, not out of passion, but because we need to feel useful. We need to be good. But being good to the world is often a way of being cruel to the self. We live in a world that functions like a machine designed to amplify the need for validation. Never before in human history has the measure of a person's worth been so quantifiable. We have turned identity into a metric. We look at small numbers glowing on a screen to decide if we are attractive, valuable, or invisible. This isn't just a social media problem. It's a structural shift in the human psyche. We have outsourced our self-esteem to the algorithm. And the troubling part? The longer we live in this mechanism, the more we lose the ability to feel our own worth in the silence. In the past, meaning was sought through nature, through the spirit, through the deep, quiet labor of the soul. Today, we are taught a different mode of existence. You are what others respond to. This is where the tragedy begins. We see it in the rising rates of burnout and the quiet quitting of the soul. People are realizing that the reward for their performance is just more performance. The ladder they've been climbing is leaning against the wrong wall. Consider the persona. Jung described the persona as the mask we wear to navigate society. It's a necessary tool. You wouldn't show your raw, unfiltered soul to a tax auditor or a stranger on the bus. But the problem arises when the mask becomes the face. When you begin seeking your sense of existence through that mask, a profound distortion takes place. You no longer live from within. You live to maintain an external image. The tighter you cling to that image, the further you drift from the truth. The fear of judgment is what transforms the persona from a tool into a prison. At first, you just want to avoid conflict. You adjust your words. You suppress your emotions. You choose the safer path. But over time, you feel as though you're no longer allowed to step outside the role. Every authentic thought creates anxiety. At that point, the persona isn't protecting you from the world. It's protecting the world from the person you truly are. You have become a ghost in a costume. The economic reality of our time reinforces this mask. We are told to brand ourselves. We are told to be consistent. In a globalized market, your personality is often your most valuable asset. But what happens to the parts of you that aren't marketable? What happens to your shadows, your contradictions, your weirdness? They get pushed into the basement of the psyche. Jung called this the shadow. And the more you polish the mask, the darker the shadow becomes. You might look successful, professional, and composed, but inside there is a mounting pressure. This is why people snap. This is why midlife crises happen. It's the soul's way of revolting against the tyranny of the persona. You cannot live for an image and expect to feel alive. Truth is not an image. Truth is a process. To focus only on yourself means to stop feeding the image and start feeding the man or woman behind it. It means being willing to be unsuccessful in the eyes of the crowd. If it means being honest in your own heart. We often use other people's lives as a measuring stick for our own. This is a form of self-betrayal. Comparison is an instinct, yes, but in the digital age, it has become a pathology. It's like walking your own path while constantly staring at someone else's road. Eventually, you trip. You lose your rhythm. You no longer know if you're living your life or just chasing the timing of the crowd. Many people think comparison is just a small ego reaction, but through Jung's lens, it's much deeper. It's a rejection of your unique psychological structure. No one expects a pine tree to bloom like a cherry blossom. No one calls a river a failure because it doesn't flow toward the desert. Yet, we spend our lives forcing ourselves to grow according to someone else's rhythm. We see friends getting married and we panic. We see peers succeeding early, and we interpret our slow progress as failure. We treat the lives of others like a universal clock. But your soul doesn't care about the clock. It cares about the season. The world is rarely patient with invisible processes. Society only rewards outcomes: the promotion, the wedding, the house, the milestone. But the most important work of your life is happening in the dark. It's the reconstruction of your inner world. It's the slow, painful process of unlearning the lies you were told about who you should be. This takes time. It requires a pace that the modern economy finds unproductive. But what is more unproductive than spending 80 years living someone else's life? We are like gardeners who uproot their plants every day just to see if they're growing as fast as the neighbors. We kill the growth by our own impatience. Focus only on yourself means trusting the biology of your own destiny. It means realizing that some journeys require years of wandering before they can truly begin. If you are behind, according to who? According to a system that wants you to be a predictable consumer, or according to a soul that is preparing for a transformation you can't yet imagine? What makes comparison truly dangerous is that it deafens you. When you are constantly looking outward, you lose the ability to hear your own inner signals. You no longer know what genuinely gives you meaning. You only know what prevents you from appearing left behind. This is the tragedy of the ladder. People spend decades climbing, only to realize the ladder was leaning against a wall they never wanted to scale. They achieve the success the world promised would make them happy, and they find only a vast, echoing emptiness. This isn't a failure of achievement, it's a failure of alignment. They lived as a reaction to the lives of others. Jung understood that a tree matures by sinking its roots deeper into its own ground, not by competing with the trees next to it. We are the only creatures that try to be something other than what we are. A dog is content being a dog. A star is content being a star. But a human being is often desperate to be anyone but themselves. Let's look at the concept of projection. This is one of Jung's most powerful insights. Most of what you think others are thinking about you is actually what you are thinking about yourself. We move through life with the feeling that we are constantly being watched and judged. A passing glance, a brief silence, a shift in tone. We interpret these as evidence of our inadequacy. But Jung argued that the parts of the psyche we haven't examined don't disappear. They get projected onto the world. If you carry a hidden sense of worthlessness, you will see contempt in the eyes of everyone you meet. If you are secretly ashamed of your desires, you will judge others for theirs. The world is a giant mirror. When you are unsettled by someone else's opinion of you, you aren't reacting to them. You are reacting to the shadow within yourself that agrees with them. The psychological rule is simple. When an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. If you don't face your inner demons, you will find them in your boss, your spouse, and your neighbor. Projection causes us to lose the ability to see reality. We see a distorted version of the world, tinted by our own wounds. This is why focusing only on yourself is the most practical thing you can do. You have to stop trying to fix the mirror and start fixing the face. When you withdraw your projections, a strange freedom emerges. You realize that most people aren't thinking about you at all. They are too busy being trapped in their own mirrors, fighting their own shadows, and worrying about their own projections. The invisible courtroom where you are being judged doesn't exist. You are the judge, the jury, and the executioner, and you can choose to step down from the bench whenever you want. True maturity begins when you stop turning the gaze of others into the authority that determines your value. This is a radical act of rebellion. In a society built on the social credit of reputation and status, deciding that your value is non-negotiable is a revolutionary move. It's like withdrawing your money from a collapsing bank. You are taking your psychic energy back. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or cold. It means becoming centered. When you are centered, other people's opinions are just weather. Some days it's sunny, some days it rains, but the mountain remains the mountain. You stop being a reaction and start being a presence. Energy that was once drained by the endless question of how do I look is now available for the question of what am I? Consider the modern geopolitical landscape. We see nations obsessed with their image on the world stage, often at the expense of their own citizens' well-being. We see information warfare designed to manipulate the collective psyche. This is just projection on a massive scale. Collective shadows, fear, greed, the need for dominance are projected onto the enemy. Jung warned that until we take responsibility for our individual shadows, we will continue to have wars. A person who is at peace with themselves is very difficult to manipulate. They don't need an enemy to feel righteous. They don't need a crowd to feel powerful. By focusing on yourself and cleaning your own inner house, you are actually doing the most important political work possible. You are removing one more source of chaos from the world. There comes a phase in the journey of the soul when the noise of the world becomes unbearable. It's not that you hate people. It's that you have become weary of the performance. You find yourself in conversations and suddenly feel like you're watching a movie you've seen 1,000 times. You see the scripts, the forced laughter, the social posturing, and you realize you can't do it anymore. This is the beginning of solitude. In many ancient traditions, separation from the crowd was seen as a prerequisite for wisdom. The desert, the mountain, the monastery, these weren't just places, they were psychological states. Jung viewed solitude as a necessary phase where the individual separates from the familiar reflections of the collective to confront the inner life directly. You cannot hear the still, small voice within if the world is constantly screaming in your ear. Solitude is not the same as loneliness. Loneliness is the pain of being alone. Solitude is the glory of being alone. But the transition from one to the other is brutal. When you first withdraw your attention from the crowd, you will feel a sense of ego death. Your old identity, the one that was built on being liked or successful, will start to wither. You might feel disconnected from friends. You might find your old hobbies boring. This isn't a sign that you're broken. It's a sign that the old you is too small for the new you that is trying to be born. Jung called this the nigredo, the blackening. It's the stage in alchemy where everything is dissolved. It's dark, it's messy, and it's terrifying. But without the dissolution of the old, there can be no creation of the new. Many people flee this darkness. They fill the silence with more work, more scrolling, more relationships. They are afraid that if they stop moving, they will disappear. And in a way, they are right. The persona will disappear. The mask needs an audience to exist. Without a crowd to applaud or judge, the mask falls off. And then, you are left with the one person you've been avoiding your whole life, yourself. The first things you encounter in solitude are rarely peace and light. You encounter the emptiness you've been postponing for years. You encounter the grief you never processed. You encounter the questions you were too busy to answer. This is why people are terrified of being alone. It's not the lack of company. It's the presence of the truth. But if you can stay in that silence, if you can resist the urge to run back to the crowd, something miraculous happens. The psyche begins to reorganize itself. Jung believed that the soul has an inherent drive toward wholeness. Like a physical wound that heals itself if kept clean, the psyche will begin to heal if you stop picking at it with external distractions. You start to develop a center. You begin to realize that the things you thought were you were just reactions. You start to discover what you actually like, what you actually believe, and what you actually want to do. with your limited time on this planet. This is the birth of the individual. An individual is not someone who is different for the sake of being different. An individual is someone who has become one with their own nature. The economy of the future is an economy of self-mastery. In a world where AI can replicate skills and algorithms can predict behavior, the only thing that cannot be automated is human depth. Your uniqueness is your only true hedge against the machine. But you cannot find that uniqueness in a crowd. You cannot find it by following best practices or trending topics. You can only find it in the quiet, often boring, labor of being with yourself. Solitude is the laboratory of the soul. It is where you forge a self that is strong enough to survive the world. When you return from the desert, you are no longer a leaf blown by the wind. You are the wind. An inner life does not form on its own. It's not something that happens to you while you're waiting for something else. It is a garden that must be tended. If you don't intentionally plant what you want, weeds will grow by default. The weeds of the psyche are the thoughts and anxieties of the collective. If you don't choose your own thoughts, the world will choose them for you. Jung spoke about libido, not just as sexual energy, but as the total psychic energy of the individual. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. If your attention is constantly directed towards social media, gossip, and the outrage of the day, your psychic energy is being scattered. You are literally giving your life force away to things that don't care about you. Building an inner life requires a fierce form of discipline. It's not the discipline of the drill sergeant. It's the discipline of the protector. You have to protect your attention as if it were your most valuable possession, because it is. Most people are exhausted, not because they are doing too much, but because they are doing too little of what matters. They are leaking energy through 1,000 tiny holes. Every unnecessary argument, every mindless scroll, every performance of perfection is a leak. Over time, these leaks drain the soul until there is nothing left but a dry, brittle ego. Focusing on yourself means plugging the leaks. It means learning the power of the word no. The first step in this discipline is the capacity for stillness. We have lost the ability to be bored. The moment there is a gap in the day, standing in line waiting for a coffee, we reach for the phone. We are terrified of the gap. But the gap is where the soul breathes. When you fill every second with stimulation, you are suffocating your inner life. You are preventing your unconscious from sending its signals to the conscious mind. Jung placed great importance on dreams and active imagination. But these things require a quiet mind. They require space. The discipline of the inner life starts with reclaiming your mornings and your evenings. It starts with a walk without a podcast. It starts with sitting in a chair for 10 minutes doing absolutely nothing. The second step is selectivity. We live in an age of information overload, but what we really have is input addiction. We feel like we need to know everything, to stay informed, to be part of the conversation. But most of the conversation is just noise. It's junk food for the mind. A disciplined inner life requires a low-information diet. You don't need to know what a celebrity said or what a politician tweeted 3 minutes ago. You need to know what you think. You need to read books that have stood the test of time, not articles that will be forgotten by tomorrow. You need to spend time with people who nourish your soul, not people who merely occupy your time. Jung warned that we live too much through collective reaction. To mature is to move from reacting to acting from your own center. This discipline isn't about being productive in the corporate sense. It's about being fertile. A fertile soul is one that has the depth to create, to love, and to find meaning even in suffering. This depth is only possible if you have a secret life. Every person needs a part of themselves that the world cannot see and cannot touch. A hobby you do just for yourself. A journal no one else reads. A set of values you wouldn't compromise for any amount of money. This inner sanctum is your true home. When you have a strong inner life, the outside world loses its power to devastate you. You realize that you are not what happens to you. You are the one to whom it happens. You are the space in which the world unfolds. We must address the hidden truth of human relationships. We are taught that intimacy means knowing everything about another person and sharing everything. But Jung suggested that true relationship is only possible between two people who are already whole. If you don't know yourself, you don't really have a relationship with your partner. You have a relationship with your projection of them. You aren't seeing them. You are seeing what you need them to be. You are using them to fill a hole in your own soul. This is why so many relationships eventually turn into power struggles or quiet resentments. When the other person fails to live up to your projection, when they refuse to be the mirror you need, you feel betrayed. But they didn't betray you. They just dared to be themselves. Focusing on yourself is actually the greatest gift you can give to others. When you take responsibility for your own happiness, your own meaning, and your own shadow, you stop being a burden to those around you. You stop demanding that they make you feel worthy or make you feel safe. You become a source of strength rather than a drain of energy. Jungian psychology teaches us that we cannot help others beyond the point we have helped ourselves. You cannot lead someone out of a forest if you are still lost in it. The most altruistic thing you can do is to become a fully realized individual. A person who is themselves gives others the permission to do the same. There is a geopolitical parallel here. We see nations trying to fix other nations while their own internal social fabric is tearing apart. We see interventions that lead to chaos because they are based on a lack of self-awareness. The same is true in our families and workplaces. We try to manage everyone else's behavior because we can't manage our own anxiety. We judge others to avoid judging ourselves. But the only person you have the right and the duty to transform is the person in the mirror. If everyone focused on their own psychological development, the problems of the collective would largely dissolve. Conflict is almost always a result of people trying to avoid their own inner work by projecting it onto an other. Let's talk about the architecture of silence. In a world that is getting louder, silence is becoming a luxury good. But it is a necessity for the soul. Architects know that a building isn't just made of walls. It's made of the space between the walls. Your life is the same. Your activities are the walls, but your being is the space. If you don't have enough space, the building collapses. Many of us are living in collapsed souls. We have no room to breathe, no room to think, no room to grow. We are full, but we are not nourished. To focus on yourself is to clear the rubble. It is to create a space where the soul can finally stretch its wings. This involves a process of psychological border control. You have to decide what you allow into your mental space. Just as a country protects its borders to maintain its sovereignty, you must protect your mind to maintain your sanity. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. You don't have to respond to every emergency. You don't have to be available to everyone at all times. Being unavailable to the world is often the only way to be available to yourself. This isn't about being rude. It's about being sovereign. A sovereign individual is someone who owns their own time, their own attention, and their own soul. And in the end, that is the only thing you truly own. As we move toward the final integration of these ideas, we have to face the most difficult part, the return. Jung didn't want people to stay in the desert forever. The goal of focusing on yourself is not to become a hermit. It's to return to the world with a self that can no longer be broken by the world. It's to move through the crowd without becoming part of the crowd. This is the stage of mastery. You wear the mask when necessary, but you never forget it's a mask. You participate in the world, but you aren't of the world. You have found a center of gravity that is deeper than your reputation, deeper than your bank account, and deeper than your ego. This journey is not for the faint of heart. It is much easier to be a reaction. It is much easier to follow the best practices and the standard path. But the standard path leads to the standard destination, a sense of quiet desperation, and a life that feels like it belonged to someone else. Jung's call to focus only on yourself is a call to courage. It is the courage to be wrong in the eyes of the world, so you can be right in the eyes of your own soul. It is the courage to walk alone until you find the company of those who are also walking their own paths. Think about the pain you've been carrying, that exhaustion, that anxiety, that feeling of being a fraud. That pain is actually a friend. It is your soul's way of screaming that something is wrong. It is the friction of a life that doesn't fit. Don't try to numb it. Don't try to fix it with more external success. Listen to it. It is telling you to stop looking outward. It is telling you to come home. The hidden truth is that everything you've been searching for, the validation, the security, the love, is already there, in the silence you've been avoiding. You are the source you've been seeking. In the global economy of the future, the most valuable asset will be your authentic presence. In a world of deepfakes and AI-generated noise, a human being who is real will be a magnet. People are starving for the real, but you can't fake being real. You can only be real by doing the work, by facing your shadow, by withdrawing your projections, by cultivating your inner life. This is the great work of being human. It is the highest purpose of your journey. You weren't born to be a version of someone else. You were born to be the only you that will ever exist in the history of the universe. So, walk with your own feet. Carry the things you long to bring into existence without concern for the gaze of the crowd. The world will try to pull you back. It will try to make you feel guilty for focusing on yourself. It will call you selfish or strange or difficult. Let them. Their judgment is just a reflection of their own fear. The fear of a person who is truly free. Because a person who no longer needs validation is a person who cannot be controlled. And that is the most dangerous and the most beautiful thing in the world. We have reached the end of this reflection, but for you, it is hopefully a beginning. The journey toward the self is not a one-time event. It is a daily practice. It is a commitment to yourself, that you will no longer trade your truth for a comfortable lie. You will no longer live as a ghost in your own life. From this moment forward, your primary responsibility is to the self, not the ego, not the me that wants toys and attention, but the self with a capital S, the deep, eternal center of your being that Jung believed was connected to something much larger than ourselves. When you focus on that center, your life begins to simplify. You stop chasing things that don't matter. You stop trying to please people who don't see you. You start to move with a quiet, steady authority. You become like a deep river. On the surface, there may be ripples and debris, but underneath, there is a powerful, unstoppable current moving toward the ocean. This is the peace that passes all understanding. It isn't the absence of trouble. It's the presence of a self that can handle trouble. It is the realization that you are the mountain, and the world is just the weather. Take a breath. Feel the weight of your own body. This is your ground. This is where your power lives. You don't need anyone's permission to be who you are. You don't need a follow or a like to exist. You are already here. You are already enough. The applause you've been waiting for will never be loud enough to fill the hole in your heart. Only you can fill it by finally showing up for yourself. Stop waiting for the world to see you. See yourself. Stop waiting for the world to love you. Love yourself. And most importantly, stop waiting for the world to give you a path. Build your own. The highest purpose of the human journey is to live as who you truly are. Not to become a better version of someone else, but to become a truer version of yourself. This is the individual. This is the human experience. It is a lonely road, yes, but it is the only road that is actually going anywhere. As you leave this space and return to the noise of the world, remember, the noise is just a suggestion. Your truth is the only command. Focus only on yourself. Reclaim your energy. Reclaim your soul. And for the first time in your life, truly live.